Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie.
How you been, Blondie?
I've been good. Just a busy summer with all my volunteering fair stuff. So it's good. So far, so good.
You are so good about that. Just always doing your volunteer stuff. I don't got time to volunteer.
It's good for my soul.
It must be, because I'm like, really? You're putting more on your plate? Why?
Because I'm trying to get into heaven.
Oh, girl, you need 48 hours in a day.
Don't be judging.
Hey, I know you, so you know you need 48 hours in a day. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, hell, woman, I need a week and a day. Don't even try.
Okay, so I did want to talk about something too, because it just came out today.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll. So I know you've been to Palm Springs.
Yes.
Have you seen the 26-foot Marilyn Monroe sculpture in front of the museum?
No.
You haven't seen the 26-foot tall, 15-ton sculpture in front of the museum? You know that whole famous picture of her where her dress is flying up over the
Yeah. I mean, so at 26 feet, if you stand under it, are you looking up her dress? What the heck?
Yes, you are. I have a picture standing under
looking up her dress.
Well, I wasn't looking up, but it's very Barbie-ish.
Okay.
It's just painted white chonies, so there's nothing vulgar or anything. Yeah, so she's 26 feet tall, and she's kind of like on this big cement, almost looks like a pedestal kind of thing. And yeah, people go up there and they stand under her dress, her skirt that's going up, and you take a picture between her legs. That's what everybody does.
She's giving birth to you? What's happening?
So it's kind of cool. It's right in front of the museum. I guess people are complaining, saying that it's blocking the view of the museum. So there's people complaining about that. And then there's also people saying that the sculpture is inappropriate. It's very sexist, being as that it's a woman with her dress. What did you just do?
I was breathing, going, really?
Oh, it's a woman with, her dress in the air. She's exposed underneath. And so they're having an issue with that.
It's iconic.
It's totally iconic, but people are complaining about it, and they actually filed a lawsuit to get it removed. So the city's been fighting it, and I guess they've just agreed. Now I have to go back into the article. Let's see. The city council has worked out a tentative agreement to move the sculpture. Palm Springs City Council has announced a tentative plan for relocating the controversial Seward Johnson sculpture. It's called Forever Maryland. And it's a major step towards resolving the litigation that itself seems to be dragging on forever. I thought that was really interesting. It's a very, very cool statue. It's very popular. And I'm just surprised that people were making such a big deal about it and wanting to get it taken out. People are just looking for reasons to be litigious these days. It's driving me insane.
You know what? Read about her. I mean, she loved that. It wasn't that she had a problem with it. That was literally something of its time that should be marked in history because she was just having fun.
We can't change everything that happened in the past, so why are we trying to erase the past? We're different now. Everybody's more aware of things. Everybody's more politically correct. I get it. But that's not who she was back then, and that's what she was famous for. She was very sexual.
She was.
So, yeah. And this is not even a sexual sculpture. This is just her with her dress flying up. And like I said, the Barbie panties painted on. What's the problem? But they're saying because kids are going into the museum that kids shouldn't be seeing, up her panties kind of thing. It's like, get over it, people. Come on now.
I know. I agree. It's
crazy.
I loved Marilyn. I mean, and I liked her because she was a thicker girl. She wasn't
tiny.
Yeah, she wasn't the anorexic. And her and Jane Mansfield, she was also a little on the thicker side.
These women were curvy.
They were curvy.
Very
Thank
curvy.
You.
Whereas a lot of people were into that whole twiggy, looking like a stick thing. So they were real women with real women's bodies.
Right.
So, it represents a lot for women. And it's crazy that people are just making such a big deal about it. But I guess the city is fighting back, and they're going to move the sculpture to a park. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been decided which park, but they're going to move it to a park so that, people can enjoy it there. But it's wild. I mean, it's like, come on, you guys. Well, some people just need to get a life. Gosh, leave Marilyn alone. She's been through enough.
Right.
Jeez.
She was very womanly.
She was. And yeah, she did a lot of things to get ahead, things I wouldn't do, but she did. More power to her. And she was actually a very smart woman.
She was.
I'm hoping they figure this out because I don't want to see the statue go. It's really a cool statue.
And what if they take it off the pedestal? Does that make it shorter so you're not looking up her skirt?
That pedestal is high. Okay, you know I'm like 5 feet tall, right? I needed a boost to get up there. And seriously, my daughter and I were waiting in line to take a picture. 2 strangers came up to help me get up that pedestal.
Tell me you have video.
I think one guy even like put his hand on like my butt cheek just to get me up there. I was like, okay, oh, I guess I'm going to say thank you. I don't know what's happening right now.
And yet now the statue is sexist.
Right. I was given more view than the statue. I might be what set this whole thing off.
Probably. Did you see that woman?
They're like, we can't have this anymore. The children cover their eyes.
The poor kids. They all go screaming from the museum.
It makes sense now. Okay, I take it.
All right. We're done.
We're
Next.
Done. All right. Enough about Miss Marilyn. What do we got going on story-wise this week?
Well, this story is about a little boy that was kidnapped. I know I know. We generally don't like doing stories about kids, but I actually really wanted to tell this one.
Okay.
So let's get our grim on. This took place in January 2013 in a rural area of Alabama called Midland City. A school bus was taking kids home after what I'm sure to them was an extremely long day at school. I remember those days.
Me too. What I wouldn't give for a long day at school these days.
Right. The bus headed down Highway 231 like it had done hundreds of times before. Charles Poland, the bus driver, has to go up a private road to do a U-turn to head back down to the highway after dropping off kids. The owner of the property, James, even cleared out that portion to make it easier on Charles to turn around. The two had been acquaintances. Charles knew he didn't have any friends, and he felt bad for him, even though he was known to be a little prickly. And on that particular morning, Charles had dropped off some jam and eggs to James to be nice. So as Charles is turning the bus around, all of a sudden the bus jerked as he slammed on the brakes. I'm assuming Charles opened the door and let James on the bus, but then James starts screaming that he needs 2 children, 6 and 8 years old, both boys, to take with him. I thought that was strangely specific.
It is strangely specific. 6 and 8. Those are very young kids. At some point, do we find out why he needed those specific ages?
We don't find out why he needed those specific ages.
Oh, okay.
That was just up to his discretion.
Very weird. Okay.
Right? Charles is telling James that no, he can't take any children. He can't release them to just anyone and blocks access to the aisle. James starts to become agitated, still demanding the kids. While Charles is talking to him, the kids keep getting up and moving seats towards the back of the bus. When James got on the bus, 15-year-old Trey Watts initiated a call to 911 telling them there is a man who is trying to take the kids. James tells Charles, quote, "We have no time, the law enforcement is coming," end quote. Charles continues to tell him he can't take any children. James says, quote, "I'm going to shoot you now," end quote. So Charles starts to pull the bus off. James shouts, don't, pulls out a gun and fired 5 shots, killing Charles. James grabs 5-year-old Ethan Gilman from the seat behind the bus driver and takes off with him. So the bus had a camera in it and recorded the whole thing. These poor kids had just witnessed their bus driver Charles being shot and were screaming and crying and calling for their mommies. It was just so sad.
Just the way you described it, geez, oh my gosh. I can only imagine how scared they were. Poor babies. How traumatic.
James called 911 and said he was holding the child in a bunker. The operator said, "Okay, what is your name, sir?" He introduced himself as James Dykes. He said he was in an underground bunker. The operator repeated, "Underground bunker?" And he said yes. Then said, "You have a child with you?" He said yes. A little bit about James Lee Dykes. He's 65 years old and a Vietnam War veteran. He had no friends that anyone could tell. He lived by himself, isolated, and had 2 daughters that he hadn't seen in years. He had a very short fuse, kind of a ranter, and would go on tirades, and was apparently a miserable neighbor to have. Sounds like a real peach.
Geez, he sounds like a horrible man, but now I kind of feel sorry for him because more than likely he's just really messed up.
Now I want you to hold on to that thought because later on you're going to get mad at him.
Ugh, all right, here we go.
One of his neighbors called the police on him because there was a dispute over the nuts from his pecan tree. Apparently, Dykes was picking up the pecans off the ground, and the neighbor felt like he was stealing them. There was body cam coverage of Dykes calling his neighbor an absolute idiot and said, "What if he was growing bananas? You can't pick them up either?" He said, and I quote, "Republicans, Democrats, they're all the same to me. They're all crooks."
So he went from pecan nuts to political nuts.
Sounds like it.
Okay, James, I'm trying to follow you.
So a little about sweet Ethan. He was 5 years old and in kindergarten. This was the first year he started taking the bus. He didn't have a very good upbringing. He was in and out of foster care because his mother had a substance abuse problem. The FBI was kind of hoping that since he had gone through the foster care system, he was used to strangers and wouldn't panic around Dykes. He also had Asperger's syndrome and ADHD.
This poor kid. And of course, Dykes picks the one that has the social issues, and I'm sure it made it much, much worse for him.
I hope not.
Gosh, how sad.
Realizing the situation is time sensitive, the FBI is called in. Steve Richardson was a special agent in charge and ran the Mobile, Alabama office. He said, quote, "Kidnappings are incredibly difficult for a number of reasons. There's a child's life at stake. Emotions are high. Time is of the essence." End quote. The FBI set up a command center in a church parking lot that was about a quarter mile from the bunker. The amount of FBI agents, vehicles, and RVs was crazy. Molly Amen, who is an FBI profiler, said, quote, "When the entire FBI machine spins on one case, acting in concert, takes your breath away. There was no mountain the FBI would not have moved to save Ethan." End quote. She was requested to come in and help create a profile of James Dykes.
Okay, so at this point, the FBI knew for sure that Ethan was in the bunker. They didn't think that maybe he was just trying to distract him or anything?
Yes, he told them that he had the child with him when he called 911 right after he kidnapped him, and the bus was at the U-turn part of his property. So it was kind of an assumption, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Now, the day after he kidnapped Ethan, Dykes had a scheduled court appearance for charges of menacing when he pointed a gun at a different neighbor. It was said, I'm thinking this was like a neighbor who said this, that after he got in trouble this last time, that he went into overdrive finishing the bunker, that they figured he planned the kidnapping because he didn't want to go to court. He didn't feel he committed any crime. This man is definitely headstrong.
Yeah, and his head's on all the wrong directions. He doesn't think he should be held accountable for pulling a gun on a neighbor?
No, that's just who he was.
Okay, then.
In his telephone call to law enforcement, James Dykes told them he didn't want to talk on the cell phone any longer, and he gave very detailed instructions telling them to stop at the front gate, and there was a white PVC tube that they were supposed to talk into. They called it the talking tube.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. What the heck? Was it connected to the bunker in some fashion?
The bunker that he kept himself and Ethan in was 6 by 8 feet and 12 feet deep. According to Stephen Richardson, he was very proud of his project. The talking tube that was made out of PVC was about 170 feet long, the distance between the front of Dykes' property and the bunker, and came out of the ground about 4 to 5 feet with an elbow piece at the top that they were supposed to talk into. But they were amazed because of the distance it had to travel. The sound was as clear as if they were talking on the phone. You know, just like cups in a string.
I never really did well with cups in a string. It never sounded clear or loud like it was supposed to. So this might be a slight upgrade from that. And I hate to say anything complimentary about this guy, but it sounds like he was kind of a genius in this department.
He did his planning.
I'm going to do that at my house, from the front of the house to the back of the house.
Instead of just yelling at your husband, you're going to have a tube.
I don't want to strain my voice. I'm going to be like, talking to the tube.
So apparently Dykes had been planning this for months and months, and his goal was to get his message out to the world, and little Ethan was a pawn in his grand scheme. So I don't know, by having 2 children and the specific ages, how this would have worked in his scheme, but he just ended up with poor little Ethan.
Wow.
Quote, "We did not know the nature of the story, only that he thought that once the public became aware of his story, there would be riots in the street and potentially a revolution of some sort," end quote, said Molly Amon. Since he had been thinking about this for months, I think he also knew that he wasn't going to make it out alive. So for the next 7 days, negotiators worked to try and save Ethan Gilman. Steve Richardson said, quote, "He fancied himself a victim. He was playing the victim card. He had anything and everything bad that ever happened to him in his life was someone else's fault," end quote. I know a couple of people like that.
I know more than a couple of people like that. And, just got to keep my distance.
Toxicity. While talking to Dykes, the negotiators were trying to let him know they were on his side by saying that they were fighting for him as well as they were fighting for Ethan. Why doesn't he come out and they can talk about his story and what he wanted to get out there, which was to share his anti-government grievances with the entire world? But he was having none of it. At the end of the day, he pretty much said he was done talking. "I don't want to talk anymore." Reminds me of my brother, actually.
Why does that remind you of your brother?
Oh, there'd be times we were talking on the phone for whatever amount of time. All of a sudden he goes, "Okay, I'm done." Okay.
Oh, that's funny. So, okay, but now that he has the FBI's attention to rant, why does he just go silent?
I think for the night, it was a busy day. He was done.
Okay.
The first night, Steve Richardson sent in a group of agents to gather some intel. They went up in the middle of the night to check out the tube and the bunker. The one thing that they had discovered, which was very unsettling and extremely dangerous, was that there was a homemade bomb at the base of the talking tube. After they realized negotiators had been talking into a booby-trapped tube, they had to change their plan of action. Day 2, they brought in some electrical technicians that made a PA system and set a speaker box right in front of the talking tube. They talked to Dykes through that, and to him, it wasn't any different than them standing there.
With all the time, money, and effort, all the planning, I'm shocked he didn't have a camera there, or at least a ring.
I was thinking the same thing. As much as he had planned this out, why didn't he have some kind of surveillance cameras outside?
He doesn't know what's going on outside his bunker, so that's not a very good idea.
The speaker box was fine for now, but the FBI thought they better get something else in place, so they were able to deliver a throw phone through the hatch that would only talk to law enforcement. I have no idea what a throw phone is, but it looked like a 2-piece push-button phone that was kind of shaped like a banana. Do you remember those phones?
Not really. To me, it sounded just like something straight out of that old comedy TV show, Get Smart. Remember, he used to talk on a few things, but he talked on his shoe. That was a phone.
And his watch? Did he talk on his watch too?
Oh, I don't remember him talking on his watch. It was always something bizarre. Like a watch would have been too normal.
And the cones of silence.
That's right. Secret meeting, cone of silence.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That was a great show.
So the throw phone benefited both Dykes and the negotiators because it enabled Dykes to get out his message, and the negotiators were able to record what he wanted. Dykes said, quote, "The message has got to be out there before I die," end quote.
It's funny because it sounds like he doesn't even know what the message is himself, other than his complaints. And did he want this message to go out to the media so that, riots would ensue? Because I don't know, he got in trouble for pointing a gun at somebody? None of this makes sense.
It seemed like his whole life in his mind was
Yeah,
completely unjust. He didn't,
right.
everything was wrong in his life and none of it was his fault.
Yeah, he's definitely a hot mess.
But he wanted a specific female reporter to come down into the bunker and broadcast live. Molly Almond said, quote, once the female reporter was down with him, his vision was that she would hold his hand while he shared his story with her, for her to broadcast to the world, and then he would suicide and she would be able to let herself out of the bunker, end quote.
Okay, again, scarily specific. I wonder why he wanted this specific reporter.
That I don't know. Just like the ages of the children, he had his reasons. We'll never know.
Yeah, his reasons that I'm sure, like everything else, make no sense.
So during the conversation with Dykes, profilers worked to analyze him. Negotiators were gathering information and being sympathetic to try to get him to talk. They told him that they were going to get his story out there, that he won't have to die. Your message will keep going, and we want Ethan safe. Molly Almond, the FBI profiler, was beginning to develop an idea of who James Dykes was. She described him as an injustice collector.
Well, that's interesting. I kind of like that. It perfectly describes him. An injustice collector.
Molly said, and I quote, I don't think he realized necessarily that we were trying to get into his head. I think that he was so focused on his own mission, nothing else existed. Dykes said that he couldn't trust anyone in this society to do anything unless it benefited them.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of truth in that.
Sad to say. It's day 3, and another complication arises. Ethan needs medication for his behavioral issues. Dykes agrees to have it delivered 4 times a day. This I didn't understand. Why didn't they just give him the whole thing for the day? But it was 4 times a day.
I wonder if maybe it needed to be refrigerated and he didn't have refrigeration.
Oh, good point. Didn't even think about that.
But he could have used a cooler. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or maybe it was timed and they didn't really want to rely on him to make sure that he received it on those times.
Or, now my brain's going, I wonder if it was a ploy just to keep constant contact with him so that they would know that Ethan was okay at least 4 times a day.
And I would definitely go that route. That's probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, because they got to be getting something out of it to do it 4 times a day, because you and I can see that it obviously made no sense.
Because we're mothers. It's like, well, why not just?
I know we resolved it 12 times in 30 seconds? Like, wait a minute.
So the SWAT team would drop the medication through the hatch at the top of the bunker. This also gave the agents a chance to look inside the bunker. I don't know how they did this, but agents were able to put a camera inside the bunker, which let them see the layout. Remember I said he'd been planning this for months? He had beds, snacks, water, and a TV. The profiler was saying that Ethan and Dykes were codependent on each other. Ethan needed supplies to stay alive, food, his medication, and even had toys for him. Dykes needed Ethan to keep him protected from everyone coming in and just taking him down. She also said that Dykes had developed some empathy for Ethan. I did get the impression that Dykes really didn't want to hurt Ethan in any way.
Well, I'm having a hard time with that one because he already murdered someone, and I'm sure sweet little 5-year-old Ethan had to step over that dead bus driver's body while he was being abducted. You know, that's damage that can never be undone, so I don't know how concerned he really was for Ethan.
I don't think he really wanted to hurt him, and you're right. The damage from this whole episode is going to go with him throughout his life, depending on the outcome. But I think at the time stepping over Charles's body was probably last in his mind as he's being dragged off the bus by some strange man.
No, I don't know about that. I'd be traumatized for life.
The story was all over the news, and while they were trying to negotiate a positive outcome, the community was getting together to pray for Ethan and holding vigils. Plus, they were also mourning the loss of their beloved bus driver, Charles Poland. The days keep passing, and everyone, including Dykes, is starting to wear down. The agents are up for 24 to 48 hours at a time. Richardson was saying that rest is needed, but all they can think about is solving the problem of getting Ethan out alive.
I can only imagine how frustrated they are because this poor kid is right there in front of them and they can't do anything about it, or he could get killed too. I mean, that would just drive me insane, just being like, he's right there.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, he was a quarter mile away. They knew exactly where he was and they couldn't get to him.
Well, they could probably even walk over the top of that bunker. He's 12 feet below them.
Exactly. But I'm sure at the time, though, of them not getting rest, they were probably running on pure adrenaline.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I'm not saying they should have done more. I'm saying how frustrating it was to figure it out.
Right. I agree. Just when you think things can't get any worse, they do. Through the hidden camera that agents had snuck in, besides seeing guns, they saw another homemade bomb. Not just a bomb, but it was attached to a propane tank. Let's just add more to this pile.
This guy really is a piece of work. I mean, I know he's unstable, but come on now. You're going to drag a kid down there when you have a bomb?
He's not thinking.
Oh, he's thinking.
He's concerned about his message.
Continue.
But there's more.
I'm not having it anymore. I'm done.
Nope, you got to listen. But there is more. Another one of Dykes' neighbors was interviewed on TV. She explained how Dykes killed her dog because he wandered onto his property. He beat him till he was dead. And he didn't have any friends? Why? I'm struggling to see how this could be.
I am so done feeling sorry for this guy. As far as I'm concerned, he can go wrap his lips around that propane tank right now.
I told you.
I'm all done. I'm all done with him.
I told you you'd change your mind.
Cool.
The agents were afraid this might send Dykes into a tizzy because the interview was spreading negative views about him. Because remember, he was always the victim. Nothing was ever his fault. In this particular instance, it was the dog's fault. It kind of makes you want him to wander onto your property.
Please do. I will leave the light on for you.
It was an ongoing battle to keep him calm and hope that he doesn't get mad or irate about anything because he was very erratic. You just didn't know what he was going to do next. He thought that the government was against him, that nothing in his life was right, that he had suffered lots of injustices, but the only authority figure that he seemed to respect was Wally Olson, who was the sheriff of Dale County. In an effort to keep Dykes balanced, the FBI asked the sheriff if he would publicly thank James Dykes for taking care of Ethan. So the sheriff goes on the news and says, quote, Mr. Dykes told us that he was taking care of Ethan. He also allowed us to provide coloring books, medication, and toys. I want to thank him for taking care of our child. End quote.
I would have lost my mind if I saw that, thinking that the whole world had gone crazy. I would have started making myself a bunker.
Well, the funny part of this was when he was done, he said, people are going to look at him and go, why are you saying that? I mean, I would have too. But during the interview, he had to remain focused on what was the ultimate goal. They wanted Dykes to feel like he was the hero for taking care of Ethan, that he was the good guy, kind of hoping that he wouldn't harm Ethan if he saw him in human terms and not just necessarily a means to an end.
Well, that's very impressive. I mean, willing to make himself a target for ridicule and anger. He's a very brave man, but yes, that would have been very confusing for the rest of us.
Exactly. I think that kind of falls under you got to do what you got to do for the greater good.
Agreed. But in the moment, I mean, I'm sure people wanted his head because that's crazy.
What are you doing?
I would have been like, seriously?
Now, this part was amazing. The FBI had called in Seabees. They are a Navy construction battalion, and through ground-penetrating radar, they were able to get specific dimensions of the bunker. So the Seabees, who apparently can build anything, built a mock-up of the bunker at the command center for the rescue team to train in. It was really cool to look at.
That's cool. I never heard of these CBs before.
Me either. And they were kind of hunky too. On a side note.
Alrighty. I'll make a mental note of that as well. I'm going to look them up now.
Okay, so I've seen this on TV, but the FBI actually did it. They went through Dykes' trash so they could learn more about him, and they ended up finding receipts for the components he used to build the bomb that was in the bunker next to the propane tank.
I mean, we've seen it on TV a million times, but I just love when they dumpster dive for evidence. It's so humbling.
Again, you got to do what you got to do for the greater good. So they sent the bomb specialists in Quantico, Virginia, the specifications. Stop it.
Quantico.
Quantico.
Is that the new liquor store on the corner? You know, the Quantico. You just quant and go.
I'm going to quant and go your head. Okay. So they sent the bomb specialists in Quantico, Virginia, the specifications from the receipts, and they built a duplicate bomb. The specialists set it off in a safe environment to see what would happen, assuming when it went off in the bunker, it would ignite the propane tank and everything would just explode into a ball of fire. But that's not what happened. When it exploded, it turned into a projectile where pieces of it would fly everywhere and hurt, maim, or kill anyone in its path. Either way, it's not a good scenario.
Who are these people that think this way? I mean, Jiminy Christmas, this is way out there.
And he's kind of really going to the extreme in the death sense.
It's not like he's not capable of having a plan and thinking things through. He's not dumb. It's not like he's in a crazy world. He's meticulously setting these things up. So he's not that crazy.
No. Again, he's got his sights focused on one thing, and whatever it takes to get that one thing done, that's what he's doing.
He's just vindictive. That's all he is. He's vindictive.
Day 5, they could tell that Dykes was getting very tired, losing his patience, and even getting irritated with Ethan. But strangely enough, a bond started to form between Ethan and Dykes, to the point that Ethan told Dykes that he loved him. But this, of course, didn't sit well with Dykes because he was on a mission, and that mission did not include getting affection from his victim. What is it called when the kidnapped person becomes attached to the kidnapper?
It's called Stockholm Syndrome.
Oh, that's right.
I will never understand it, but it's a real thing.
I couldn't remember the name of it. I knew there was a thing.
It's a thing.
There were also moments when Dykes was becoming extremely angry. One was when they were delivering Ethan's medication and he saw a camera. He was irritated. Another time was when they were delivering the medication again and he saw the muzzle of a gun on the agent that was delivering the medication.
I get the muzzle, but why are the cameras pissing him off when he's doing all of this for attention, right?
Right.
So I would think the more cameras, the better.
But they aren't cameras that he's choosing. They're cameras that they're doing on their own.
That makes sense.
During all of this, they're trying to keep him calm, but his patience level just keeps getting less and less. So they're trying to calm him down. And at one point, Dykes breaks down. He was very upset. He was even crying. And that's when they realized they weren't going to be able to bring him back down. The next day, he demanded to speak to the reporter directly over the phone, but unfortunately, he wasn't getting his way. One of the tactics that they used to calm him down was to ask how Ethan was doing. Normally, he would check on Ethan and go back to the phone a bit more relaxed. But that day, when the agent asked if Ethan was ready for more medication, Dykes raised his voice and said, quote, "No, what's going on about the phone?" End quote. At that point, the FBI knew they had to do something soon.
Okay, so what is going on about a phone? I didn't understand that part.
I think because they weren't bringing the reporter down into the bunker, he wanted to talk to them on the phone at this point.
So it wasn't a phone, it was a phone conversation.
Well, no, he wanted a phone because the phone that the throw phone that they gave him only went to law enforcement or the FBI. He couldn't make an outside call. And I know he did have a cell phone, but you're talking day 6, maybe it ran out of battery. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. All right, that makes more sense.
The FBI did some checking into Dykes' background and learned that he had 2 daughters, but that he hadn't talked to them in many years. They got a hold of one of his daughters who agreed to talk to him in the hope that it would help save Ethan. Cindy Dykes told the Wall Street Journal about what the FBI asked her. Quote, "They asked me the last time I talked to him, and I told him I hadn't seen or heard from him since I was 10 or 11. And I also told them whatever they needed because I have a little boy the same age." End quote.
Well, thank goodness that his daughter was a good and decent person.
Yeah. I mean, she's probably looking at her son going, I can't imagine.
Right? Yeah.
Going into day 7, Dykes started spinning more out of control. He had a mission, and it was failing. He wanted that reporter so he could have a platform to speak to the media and tell his story to the world, but he was not getting that.
That reporter was smart to not have gone into that bunker because this guy's way too unstable.
Right. And just from everything I saw, I didn't get the impression that they even asked this mysterious reporter to go. Because, knowing reporters, I mean, anything to get the story.
Yeah, and then they've got another person to save.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that's not going to work.
Dykes ranted, quote, "I'm smarter than most of you people. I have experience. I have the ability, and I have the balls to show you just how corrupt this gosh darn system is," end quote. Of course, we all know he didn't say gosh darn. If his demands weren't met soon, that was it. He was going to blow up Ethan and himself.
Wow. To hear him actually say it must have really scared the crap out of them.
I'm wondering how close Ethan is to even hear this, too. I mean, he's right there.
Well, he's right there. Yeah, I mean, that's wild.
So through the camera that was snuck in, they could see that he was practicing with his gun and planning on how he would possibly set off the explosive device in the bunker. He even said that he was teaching Ethan how to set the bomb off. It seemed like everything was just going bad. So the FBI came up with a plan, got the okay to do it, and this is where Cindy Dykes came in. The FBI set up a video chat with Dykes and his daughter. I'm guessing Dykes was excited at the prospect of reconnecting with her because he asked for a comb to comb his hair, and he asked for a clean shirt. He wanted to look nice for the video chat. The plan goes into effect. They wanted Ethan away from harm and planned to hand Dykes a computer, which meant he had to come to the ladder where the entrance of the hatch was. Once they handed him the computer, they could see that Ethan was far enough away to initiate the rescue. The FBI had a reconnaissance aircraft that was giving a live feed to the command center of what was happening. Now it's time. Ready, set, go. They blew the hatch open, and the first operator jumped in. The second operator followed, but he couldn't get in because there was a problem. The ladder was booby-trapped with a maze of cables that blocked them from going in. Dykes starts shooting. The second operator gets out, and they pull the first operator out, and thankfully Dykes didn't hit anybody. This was described as shooting fish in a barrel. I give those operators a lot of credit. They know the risk, but they still go in first and second.
These brave men, they just don't get enough credit, if you ask me. I mean, who signs up for this job? You got to be a man of integrity, such bravery. You got to love your country. God bless them.
Exactly. Man or woman.
Man or woman, that's correct.
They didn't give up. They threw a stun grenade in there that would temporarily disorient Dykes so that they could go in, cut the cables, and get all the way into the bunker. But somehow Dykes managed to set off the bomb that was outside by the talking tube, and the tube filled with smoke that went back into the bunker. No one could see anything.
Dang, that is so smart. I wonder if he planned that ahead of time or if it just happened to work out in his favor, because that's brilliant if he really thought about that.
I think he was practicing all the scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just held their breath as they're trying to cut these cables, which only took seconds, but just sitting there watching seemed like hours. Then in the command center, they heard over the radio that the team leader said very calmly, quote, "Gentlemen, we have to get in this hole. This is what we do," end quote.
I'm just going to leave that one alone, okay? Too easy.
Okay, crazy. Well, I got lady tingles at how manly that was, little Miss Pervy.
You do you, okay? I'm just saying.
Okay, so moments later, operator number 1 jumped back into the hole. He got to the bottom and found Ethan. He immediately covered him with his body, followed by operator number 2 and operator number 3, jumping in to try to detain Dykes. Then they heard over the radio again, "The bad guy's down. He's down hard." When they were trying to apprehend Dykes, there was a struggle, and he was killed in the process.
Oh, well, bye-bye, bad guy. You did this to yourself. I don't feel bad for him.
One of the interviewers during the show that I watch said, I was with SWAT, so I know what that term, "the bad guys are down, he's down hard," means. And I laughed. I'm like, well, isn't that kind of self-explanatory?
I was like, he's down hard. Okay. Did he skin his knees or something? I don't know what that means.
Now everyone's thoughts go to Ethan. The team leader says he's crying, and in the command center, they're going, well, if he's crying, he's breathing. And the next thing you know, a blonde-haired boy with a red shirt comes out of the hole. Ethan was okay, and no one else was hurt. He was taken to the hospital and checked out fine. Ethan moved back in with his mother, but after about 6 months, he was back in social services because his home life was unstable.
Geez, this sweet little baby boy just can't catch a break. This is so sad.
It does get better, though. When he was in foster care before, he had stayed with Pastor Brandon Turner and his wife Nikki for a period of time. The family adored him. So when he ended up back in social services, the social worker who worked with him before called Nikki and asked if she would be willing to take him again. Nikki said, "Of course, it feels like he's mine anyway." So he moved back in with the Turners and never left.
Thank goodness.
Little ray of sunshine right there.
Right? There's good people in the world after all.
About 7 years after the kidnapping, Ethan is 13 and is still with the Turners. He has 9 brothers and sisters, all adopted by the Turners. He does remember some of the details of those 7 days. He said about the last day, quote, "It all happened in a split second. As soon as the thing came from the door, it went dum 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 dum, and then smoke," end quote. Then the interviewer asked him if he could see anything, and he said, quote, "Think I seen the bullet and the smoke and the door open, and that's when it all got quiet," end quote.
Wow, children are so resilient.
And this poor kid, he went through so much.
So much. I mean, what a mind screw, all of it.
The interviewer met with Steve Richardson, the lead agent, and another FBI agent back at the church parking lot where the command center once was. Richardson said how strange it was because the last time he was there, the now empty parking lot was packed with agents' cars and mobile command center RVs. While they were talking, they got a surprise. The Turners brought Ethan to see them. And yes, I cried like a baby.
Yeah, I would have been all teary-eyed and snotty-nosed. There's no getting around that.
Okay, I never said snotty-nosed. I said teary-eyed.
Okay, I was talking about me, and you know darn well I would have been snotty-nosed, okay?
Give me a box of Kleenex. Richardson had said to him, "Hey, how are you? You're all grown up. You probably don't remember us, but we sure do remember you." Richardson commented later that many of the team members have families and they have to separate themselves from that while they're trying to do their job. He said he didn't think he felt the emotions at the time that he feels today when he looks back on it. There's a section of Highway 231 that has been named the Charles Poland Memorial Highway as a remembrance of what he sacrificed. Stephen Richardson summed it up beautifully. He said, quote, "On that particular day, the most innocent form of human nature came into contact with the most evil form of human nature, and there was conflict. But ultimately, because of the perseverance, the dedication, and the hard work of everyone involved, a life was saved. The child is with us today, and what a blessing." End quote.
Wow. In this story of good and evil, it is so nice to see that good won out on this one.
Yeah. I feel bad for the bus driver,
Of course.
but the child was saved.
Well, thank you for bringing that story to us. And like I said, nice to have a happy ending. We want to thank you all for listening. Don't forget to have fun, take care, and let your grimaginations run wild. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. We would just like to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send us your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @grimwitwithdimwits, X @grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook grimwitwithdimwits. And please join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
And we would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way, and they would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.